where do we have to read? Tell me.
Second para of the principle of divine works.
Okay. The works of sacrifice. Is that it?
Yes, Rangada.
The works of sacrifice. Okay. So I think everybody is there. But Shilpa has said that she can't attend, so we won't wait for her. And Tarika also won't be joining today, she says. So let's start. Okay. So Pallavi, since you gave me the indication that I have to start from works of sacrifice, you start reading today.
Okay, Rangada.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Works. The works of sacrifice are thus vindicated as a means of liberation and absolute spiritual perfection, samsiddhi. So Janaka and other great karma yogins of the mighty ancient yoga attained to perfection by equal and desireless works done as a sacrifice without the least egoistic aim or attachment. Karmaneva hi samsiddhima astita janakad. So too, and with the same desirelessness, after liberation and perfection, works can and have to be continued by us in a large divine spirit with the calm, high nature of a spiritual royalty. Thou shouldst do works regarding also the holding together of the peoples. Loka sangrama evapi sampasya kartum aharsi. Whatsoever the best doeth, and the lower kind of man puts into practice. The standard he creates, the people follows, O son of Pritha. I have no work that I need to do in all the three worlds. I have nothing that I have not gained and I have yet to gain, and I abide verily in the paths of action. Varta eva cha karmani. Eva implying I abide in it and do not leave it as the sannyasin thinks himself bound to abandon works. For if I did not abide sleeplessly in the paths of action, men follow in every way my path. These peoples would sink to destruction if I did not work, and I should be the creator of confusion and slay these creatures. As those who know not act with attachment to the action, he who knows should act without attachment, having for his motive to hold together the peoples. He should not create a division of their understanding in the ignorant who are attached to their works. He should set them to all actions, doing them himself with knowledge and in yoga. There are few more important passages in the Gita than these seven striking couplets.
So, very, very crucial that works have to continue because in India, for a long time, works in the physical world will give you attachment and desire, so don't do any work. And apart from that, the Brahmic consciousness is static, silent, no movement at all, only watching carefully with knowledge. Whereas in the physical world, there is constant movement. And when there is constant movement and action, you cannot concentrate, you cannot get to knowledge. That's very obvious, we all know that. So this is why. But now the idea is reversed by the Gita. It says, no, not only you have to gain liberation first by non-identification with body, mind, life, but after you have got, like the sannyasin does, he sees that his aim of life is achieved and he disappears into the infinite. But Gita says, no, the real work starts after liberation. So once you have got your liberation, come down and continue to work in the physical world. Because then you will be helping God's evolution. You will be helping the evolution go to the next step. And is there any end to evolution? No. It goes on and on. So you can go on doing works in the physical world even after the highest realizations of God. Okay. So this is the basic idea. So now we'll start looking at each sentence. The works of sacrifice are thus vindicated, proved, settled as fact, okay? Vindicated as a means of liberation and absolute spiritual perfection. Some say they. So it is not that you have to give up the physical works in the world like the Bhakti Yoga and the Jnana Yoga and the traditional paths say, but you have to, in the beginning, non-identification is necessary. Yes, you have to say, not that you give up works, but you say, I am not the body, I am not the body. Okay, I am not the vital, I am not the mind, I am pure consciousness. Okay, like that beautiful Nirvana Ashtakam of Shankaracharya. Mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham. Then what am I? Chirananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I am pure Chit Ananda Rupam. I am that. So, this is what you have to do. But once you have got the liberation, not going upwards again into the infinite void, but coming down again into the physical world, and this time coming down and not becoming a prisoner of body, mind, life, but becoming master of body, mind, life. Come down with the divine consciousness and continue to work in the world. And work for what reason? Loka Sangrahanartham. For the maintenance of the world and also Loka Hite Rata. You are engaged in the good of all people. Some Siddhi. So, Janaka and other great karma yogins of the mighty ancient yoga attained to perfection by equal and desireless works done as a sacrifice without the least egoistic aim or attachment. Karmanyaiva hi samsiddhim asthita janakadaya. Beginning from Janakadaya. Karmanaiva. Karmana eva. Okay. By works alone, by works only, samsiddhim was reached asthita janakadaya. So too, with the same desirelessness, after liberation and perfection, works can and have to be maintained. Look at that. This is the works can be maintained, okay, something neutral. Okay, even a yogi who reaches continues to work in the physical world, but he is not attached with the body, mind, life. But Gita says you have to continue. Works and have to be continued by us in a large divine spirit. And what is that? I am not doing any work for myself, but I am doing work for the divine. And with a calm, high nature, your nature is now not that petty, identified with your body, mind, life, but of a very high nature. Your consciousness has gone up, and there is purification of your instrumental being, and you are now capable of continuing work in the physical world without egoistic motives. And look at the word spiritual royalty. This is a very interesting word he is using, spiritual royalty. Okay, I'd like to just give one incident of the spiritual royalty because it was so striking for me when I read that. Okay, we all know that Raman Maharshi was not doing the Gita's work in the beginning. Okay, so that also is a very interesting story. I'll tell you. So he came from Madurai after he was 16 years old. He had just gone to college, but he gave up all that and came to Tiruvannamalai after a lot of mistakes and struggles, and finally settled in the temple. There is a temple in Tiruvannamalai, and he used to sit in some sort of underground cellar-like thing. I've seen that place. He used to sit there and meditate constantly, and not even dress. He used to only wear a kaupin. And when he was hungry, he would go out after 2-3 days of hunger. He would go out and beg his food. No dish, nothing, just his hands, like that. Okay, and people would pour gruel, okay, rice, rice and all that. He would just eat like that and go. So afterwards, much later, when he was recognized as a Mahayogi, okay, he was asked by somebody, didn't you feel ashamed? In modern times, you are going and begging, and you are an educated person. Didn't you feel ashamed of yourself? Was there no shame? Then he replied in this fantastic way, not at all. I was a king, I was an emperor. I am referring this story to you because of spiritual, using the word spiritual royalty. It's not the clothes that you wear and the food that you eat and your education, not at all. You are a spiritual royalty, even without clothes. It reminds me of Sriramda's one line in the poem. Even in rags, I am a god. A very small four-line poem, and Mother has recited those. Fantastic. So even in rags, I am a god. So look at that spiritual royalty. So you don't need wealth and richness in the physical world. You can be spiritually royal. Okay, so thou, now he is quoting, he is translating. Thou shouldst do works regarding also the holding together of the peoples. Loka sangrahanartham. Loka sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. You deserve, you should do works looking to the maintenance of the physical world. Okay, Loka sangrahanartham. Now, this is a very interesting idea, and we'll discuss that a little bit. At the highest level, the divine is immutable. There is no movement. There is absolute static condition. You are perfect. You don't need any movement. Movement means evolution. And you don't need to, divine is perfect. What does he need to evolve? Rather, the movement is all below. Okay? In the physical world, there is constant movement, and movement is necessary. Without movement, how will you evolve? Okay? So, in the movement, you have to evolve. Now, if there is no movement, then there will be dissolution. Okay? So, the world has to be kept in motion. In other words, when a yogi reaches the perfection of silence, when he goes away, he is not helping the evolution in the physical world with the superior consciousness. He is just removing himself and disappearing. But if you come down with the perfect divine consciousness into the physical world and continue to work, you become like a lighthouse, spreading light and love and power everywhere. Okay? So that's exactly what you should do. You have to continue to work in the physical world. And then Sri Krishna gives his own example. Okay? He says that I have nothing to gain. Okay? And I have nothing to achieve. And yet I continue to work in the physical world. How does he work? He works through universal nature. He doesn't work himself. He works through physical nature. But his divine presence is there everywhere in the physical world. So, now I read that quotation. Thou shouldst do works regarding also the holding together of the peoples. Loka sangraham evapi sampashyan. Seeing that they have to be maintained, you have to continue work. Okay. Kartum arhasi. Okay. Whatever the best doeth, now the next verse, whatever the best doeth, that the lower kind of man puts into practice. So, the standard he creates, the people follows. Now that's interesting. The people follows. The people is singular and follows. People is not plural. It's a collective noun. People follows. Okay. The O son of Pritha, I have no work that I need to do in all the three worlds. Which are the three worlds? The gross world, the subtle world, and the causal world. Okay. These are the three worlds. Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. Okay. Or you can use Sanskrit words also. There are words there. The lowest is the Virat. The physical world is Virat. The subtle world is Hiranyagarbha, which is a golden womb from which the physical world is born. And the highest is the Prajna, the wisdom, highest. So you can also say gross world, subtle world, causal world. These are the three words. Yes. I have nothing that I have not gained and have yet to gain. Nothing. Everything I have got already. And I abide verily in the paths of action. The physical world is constantly maintained by the divine action. Varta evacha karmani. Eva, implying, eva means, yes, that itself, eva, the stress is there. Okay? Implying, I abide in it and I do not leave it, as the sannyasin thinks himself bound to abandon works. You don't need to. Normally, when a sannyasin gets experience of the higher planes of consciousness, silence, the Brahman consciousness, if he happens to come down, and he will come down. In the beginning, it's only an experience, not a realization. So when he comes down, he is again back in his old nature. So he feels disgusted with himself. And he is, from that point of view, he is justified in saying, I don't want this, I want to remain only up there. But what he misses is that it's possible with even more effort to remain in the physical world with a divine consciousness. That he misses. Okay? He takes the easy way out, but there's a more difficult path. For if I did not abide sleeplessly in the paths of action, men follow in every way my path, these people would sink to destruction. And if I did not work, and I should be the creator of confusion and slay these creatures. Movement is essential. All progress implies movement. If there is no movement in the physical world, there will decay. Okay, we know that. Then this truth is a very deep truth, and it applies even to the most shallow things. Okay, we know very well that if you have a phone or even any electronic equipment and you keep it and not use it, it will decay and get spoiled. Okay, so movement is necessary and progress is always movement. Yes. So if the divine did not work here, and if a yogi who is supposed to be superior did not do any work, then the others also will follow him and they also won't do any work. But they are not ready for that kind of action. So then there will be confusion and they'll be destroyed. So that's what he said. As those who know not act with attachment to the action, he who knows should act without attachment, having for his motive to hold together the peoples. So this is the difference. The sannyasi doesn't even want to come down to the physical world, but if you come down to the physical world, don't go back to the old habit of egoistic attachment and desire. Be free of all these three things. That's what he said. And continue to work in the physical world. He should not create a division of their understanding in the ignorant who are attached to their works. He should set them to all actions, doing them himself with knowledge and in yoga. Let the others continue to act, even if it is in ignorance and attachment. But if you tell them not to act and is on a non-action is superior to action, you will confuse them and they'll get destroyed. Non-action is useful only when you have the knowledge. But if you are in ignorance, non-action is deadly. It is fatal. Okay? That's what he said. So that is the reason why he says finally, there are few more important passages in the Gita than these 7 striking couplets. And we know very well that those whole yoga is integral yoga. He says you have to continue to work in the physical world and use other methods, but not static methods. Sitting in meditation and not wanting to do any work in the physical world. No. Mother used to always insist that everybody should do some work. She was not very much in favor of non-active meditation. Of course, she never said that don't meditate. She didn't say that. But she would always send people for work. So this is the passage that we have just now read. You have to continue. So in the integral yoga, you have to continue to work in the physical world and through works. In the beginning, when you are in ignorance, through works, get liberation. The others are opting for the other path, non-work. They don't want to do work and get liberation. Okay, fine. There is not finding fault with it. But this is better because when you are doing meditation and you get liberation, the moment you come down to the physical world, you are back to your old nature. The desires come back, the attachments come back, the imperfections come back. But if you are constantly doing work in the physical world and you get liberation, that liberation becomes part of your life So you are not falling anymore. Okay, you are not falling anymore. Even the nature gets transformed. That's why karma yoga is superior to jnana yoga in that sense. The results are much, much wider. Okay, so let's go to the next.
Ranganath,
Yeah, tell me.
no,
Yes,
if we have liberation through works,
yeah,
how does it help other people? I mean, it will help me personally, but how does it help other people?
because you are setting an example that those who are ready for spiritual life and think that the jnana yoga path is correct, they'll be mistaken if they are not ready. So, those who are doing normal works, okay, you have to set an example that not running away from the world, but doing works in the physical world is necessary. Even in the beginning, if you are ignorant and you are got attachment and desire, do the works in the sense of karma yoga. Do it as a sacrifice. Don't give up works. He's saying that the karma yoga path is better than the jnana yoga path. That's all. Okay. It will help the others not to have confusion. That's what Siddha is saying. Rather, the Gita is saying. And Siddha is in full agreement with that. Okay. So, the result also justifies the philosophy. The result is that you continue to do physical works and all, but since you have done it for the Lord and not for yourself, attachment disappears. Desire also slowly goes away because you desire things because of the ego. But if you are doing the works not for yourself but for the divine, slowly the ego and desire fritter away. They slowly melt and disappear. That's what self is. Okay. So let's read the next one. It's about slightly smaller than one page. We have got time. So who will read? Oh, Kiran has also joined. Okay. I thought she was. Good morning, Kiran. You're back in Nashik. Okay. So who will read?
Good morning, Agada. Yes, in Nasik.
Are you in a
Yes,
condition to read, Kiran?
yes, I can read.
Okay. Then you read the para. But let us
Okay.
clearly understand.
Yes.
Okay.
But let us clearly understand that they must not be interpreted as the modern pragmatic tendency concerned much more with the present affairs of the world than with any high and far off spiritual possibility seeks to interpret them, as no more than a philosophical and religious justification of social service, patriotic, cosmopolitan, and humanitarian effort and attachment to the hundred eager social schemes and dreams which attract the modern intellect. It is not the rule of a large moral and intellectual altruism which is here announced, but that of a spiritual unity with God and with this world of beings who dwell in Him and in whom He dwells. It is not an injunction to subordinate the individual to society and humanity or immolate egoism on the altar of the human collectivity, but to fulfill the individual in God and to sacrifice the ego on the one true altar of the all embracing divinity. The Gita moves on a plane of ideas and experiences higher than those of the modern mind, which is at the stage indeed of a struggle to shake off the coils of egoism, but is still mundane in its outlook and intellectual and moral rather than spiritual in its temperament. Patriotism, cosmopolitanism, service of society, collectivism, humanitarianism, the ideal or religion of humanity are admirable aids towards our escape from our primary condition of individual, family, social, national egoism into a secondary stage in which the individual realizes as far as it can be done on the intellectual, moral, and emotional level, comma dash. On the level he cannot do it entirely in the right and perfect way, the way of the integral truth of his being, comma dash is finished, the oneness of his existence with the existence of other beings. But the thought of the Gita reaches beyond to a tertiary condition of our developing self-consciousness towards which the secondary is only a partial stage of advance.
Kiran read even with the comma dash also she read. Which is the parenthetical phrase. Anyway,
Yes.
it's a very interesting. Now, Surendra is saying, or rather the Gita, he's translating the Gita. By the way, the other day someone asked me, do you think that the essays on the Gita is Surendru's own thoughts he's putting in, or is he just translating or giving the ideas of the Gita? 90%. He is just telling you what the Gita is saying. Okay? But there is an attitude which he is interpreting, because he is also saying that it agrees fully in the first stage of his own philosophy. Okay, so in fact, there is somebody, a Westerner, who said that Surendru's interpretation of the Gita is not exactly what it should be. It is his own interpretation. Now, when you are interpreting something, you are naturally using your own nature. Okay, so no interpretation can be absolutely that which is intended by the text itself. It's not possible, because you are doing it with your own nature. Your nature is the instrument. So a little bit of your own nature will definitely come in. Okay, so Sharma is fully justified in the background of the Gita. Okay, there is his own experiences are there. But certainly you cannot say that he is misinterpreting the Gita. That's what the Western critics said, but that's absolutely wrong. Okay? It is certainly what the Gita is saying. In fact, he brings out more accurately what the Gita is saying than the others. Many of the others are misinterpreting and saying Gita is only Karma Yoga, Gita is only Bhakti Yoga, Gita is only Jnana Yoga. They even tell you how to sit and your posture and where to sit, how to sit. So it is Jnana Yoga. But that's not true at all. Surendra says it is synthetic. It is giving you all. Many of the slokas are describing Jnana Yoga, but many are describing Karma Yoga, and many are describing also Bhakti Yoga. So, naturally, it's a synthetic word. So, now we go to each sentence. We have just got probably enough time to finish this. But let us clearly understand.
Excuse me. When
Pardon?
Sri Aurobindo was in the Alipur jail,
Yes,
wasn't it Sri Krishna who came and taught him the Gita?
absolutely.
So obviously, his interpretation of the Gita would be the most correct, no? Because the
Absolutely.
author has told him what it was.
That's exactly what I meant. I didn't mention the Alipur jail experience, but that's exactly it. And not only Sri Krishna not only told him about the Gita, how to read and what is the intention of the Gita, but he also told him about the Vedas. And that's why when he came to Pondicherry, he got interested in the Vedas and started reading, okay, and writing and interpreting and finding out the secret. Sri Krishna gave him also the secret to the Vedas. When he was in Baroda and in Bengal, he did not touch the Vedas. He came to Pondicherry and started looking at the Vedas after Sri Krishna's advice and guidance. That's right. You are absolutely right. In fact, it was a very close relationship. Okay, that was the experience he had of the personal divine. In Baroda, he had the experience of the impersonal divine. But in jail, it was the experience of the personal divine. Sri Krishna himself came to him and was guiding him. Okay, so that's right. You are right. So let us clearly understand that they must not be interpreted as the modern pragmatic tendency concerned much more with the present affairs of the world than with any high and far off spiritual possibility seeks to interpret them as no more than a philosophical and religious justification for social service, patriotic, cosmopolitan and humanitarian effort and attachment to the 100 eager social schemes and dreams which attract the modern intellect. In fact, there is a word called the religion of humanity. Nothing can be greater, says the many ideas in the West, India. Nothing can be greater than to do charity works. You are not doing for yourself, but you are doing for mankind. Okay? Charity, humanity, okay, help others. That's the highest that the West can think of. Many in India also. Okay, they think that that is the best you can do. That's why it is so common in India. Feed 100 people on your birthday. Feed 100 people. Do help when the tsunami comes. Fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But it is not spiritual. It can be spiritual if you do it without ego. But when you're doing it normally, the ego comes in. You get satisfaction. Oh, look what I've done. So wonderful. I have helped so many people. I have not done it for myself. And there's a background atmosphere in the background of your mind that I have done it for others, not for myself. So I have done a great work. That's ego. So, but you can do social work without ego. That's possible. Okay? That's possible. But it is better, even better step to do it for God and not for humanity. So in the beginning, that's the whole subject is treated in the standards of conduct. First of all, you do it for yourself, then you do it for others, and then finally you do it for humanity, and then finally for God. Because God knows better than us what to do for humanity. So why not go to the highest and give it to Him? He will do what is necessary. That's it. The whole paragraph is that. He's stressing charity, humanity, humanitarianism, kindness, and helping society is fine, but it's not necessarily spiritual. It can be, but it's not necessarily spiritual. There is a higher motive. But let us clearly understand that they must not be included. That we read. Okay, so I go to the next sentence. It is not the rule of a large moral and intellectual altruism. You can say also altruism. Altruism is charity, okay, philanthropy towards the others, which is here announced, but that of a spiritual unity with God. Intellectual altruism is helping men, but you do it for the divine, spiritual unity with God. And by the way, and if you are in a spiritual unity with God, He may tell you to help others, but He may also tell you not to help others and to do some other work. Okay, that's the reason why in the ashram we don't have charity. Okay, charity is not a goal. Why? Because there is a much higher goal to be attained, and that is what was being done. Preserve all your energies for the highest. And mind you, this is a very subtle point. It's not that charity is bad. Okay, I know once I had gone to the income tax office, and there the officer told me, he is a very good man, but he told me, why doesn't the ashram do charity works? Why don't they open hospitals for the poor? Why don't they feed the poor? So this is something that not very easily understood. Okay, so you are doing for the highest, and if you want to do for the highest, preserve all your energies for the highest. Don't dilute it. Okay, that's the whole idea. So it's a very subtle point. It can be argued also. Okay, but I leave it at that. It is not the unity with God, but our spiritual unity with God, and with this world of beings who dwell in Him and in whom He dwells. So it is not so. It is not an injunction. Injunction, advice, or order. It can be anything. It's not an injunction to subordinate the individual to society and humanity, or immolate egoism on the altar of the human collectivity. This is not, this is the, Swami is making very clear what the Gita's working in the physical world means. Not working for humanity, but to fulfill the individual in God. and to sacrifice the ego on the one true altar of the all-embracing divinity. The Gita moves on a plane of ideas and experiences higher than those of the modern mind, which is at the stage indeed of a struggle to shake off the coils of egoism. So those who are first of all engaged in works only for themselves, certainly humanitarian work is very useful for them and they should do it. But if you are already at that level, then spiritual action is better. Okay, that's what it means. So, to shake off the coils of egoism, but it's still mundane. Mundane from the French word monde, world. Okay, so mundane, adjective of worldly in its outlook, and intellectual and moral rather than spiritual in its temperament. Okay, so charity works is not spiritual, but it is. Note the language. He's saying, if you look at intelligent and moral more than spiritual. So he's not saying that morality is always not spiritual, not at all. He's saying rather more than spiritual, rather than spiritual. So morality can be spiritual, but not necessarily. Okay, you can do, if you are in a spiritual consciousness, you can do non-moral action also. Many examples can be given from our scriptures. Okay, Rama killing Bali, but standing behind somebody. Okay, so they will say, "Oh, you are cheating." So that's a moral idea. But in spiritual idea, you can give many examples of like this. Okay, or even the Yudhishthir. Okay, telling a half lie. Okay, so that's a moral thing. But the intention is something far greater than that. So morality is not necessarily spiritual, but it can be spiritual if the divine orders you. But if the divine orders you to do charity works, fine. But if the divine tells you don't do charity work, do some other work, that's even better. Okay, so that's the whole point. Patriotism, very noble. Cosmopolitanism, very noble. Service of society, collectivism, humanitarianism. Okay, the ideal or the religion of humanity. This word is very often used, religion of humanity. Don't go to religion of the church and the mosque and the temple. No. Do the religion of humanity. Help others. Be more practical. It will be something very useful. This is the religion of humanity. This is the normal idea in the West. Are admirable aids. They are very good towards our escape from the primary condition of individual, family, social, national egoism. So note interestingly that there can be an individual ego, there can even be a family ego, there can even be a social ego, and even a national ego. So all these things are possible. But you have to go beyond all these things in the spiritual field. On that level, he cannot do it entirely in the right and perfect way, the way of the integral truth of the being, the oneness of his existence with the existence of all others. By doing charity works at a lower level of consciousness, you are not really helping them. Okay, there are many, many interesting stories also which tell you that. Okay, there's one story which says, if you give fish to a man, you are doing charity works fine. But why don't you do something else? Why don't you teach him how to fish? Okay, then it's even better. Then you are doing something permanently helpful to him. So a spiritual action is more helpful than a moral action. That's exactly what is being said. Patriotism is fine. But if the divine tells you, don't worry about your country, but do something else, you have to do that. Cosmopolitanism, service of society, all wonderful things, but limited and normally ego-based. Our escape, national egoism in secondary stage of it, in which the individual realizes as far as it can be done on the intellectual, moral and emotional level. So you can do that If you are at that level, fine. But spiritual is doing it for God and not for human beings. The oneness of his existence with the existence of other beings, this can be done only when you are at a spiritual level of consciousness, the cosmic consciousness. When you are at that level of the cosmic consciousness, you are doing it for yourself because everybody else is yourself. Okay, so that's the interesting part. There is in the Chandogya Upanishad, there is a passage where the Yajnavalkya has two wives. Okay, and he is telling his wives that I am going to give up all my properties, I'm going to take sannyasa, so I'm going to divide it between the two of you. Okay, so one of them says, okay, and the other one says, but is it going to help me to get the Brahman consciousness? And then he starts preaching to her about spiritual life. And he says, and Srinath has quoted this in the synthesis, not for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of yourself. There is love. Now, this can be interpreted in two ways. At the lower level, when you are loving somebody, it is for yourself that you are doing. It's an egoistic love. But at the higher level, when you are working for others and you are in a cosmic consciousness, when you are helping others, you are helping yourself because you are one with everybody. So this is not for the sake of the wife, but for the sake of the self. You are doing, love is there. That can be interpreted in two ways. So Srinath actually mentions that in the synthesis of yoga. So this is what is the burden of this paragraph. Okay, so we go to the next one next time. The Indian social tendency. So we have crossed our time limit today already. So au revoir and have a nice day, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Rangada.
Thank you, Rangada.
Thank you, Rangata.
Yes, Rangada. Ahoj, Rangada.
Thank you, Rangana.